Okay, so here we are. I'm Linda Eling Lee. I am the founding director and head of the MSCI Sustainability Institute. I am so thrilled to be welcoming all of you to the celebration of our new institute. I hope you grabbed a drink on the way in. That was my idea, to start with drinks, so hopefully you enjoy. I would also really highly recommend that if you see a seat that you grab one, because I think seating is going to be kind of limited. And so we have more seats up here in the front, so don't be shy. We have more up here as well. It's going to get a little bit more crowded. So here we are. This is New York Climate Week. And it has become routine year after year that Climate Week takes place, following a summer of deadly heat and wildfires and flooding. We're getting used to that. Maybe we shouldn't be, but once again, we are actually on the way to marking a year that is going to be the hottest on record. What's also become quite routine, I think, year after year here in New York is that world leaders come. Leaders from across industry and finance come to New York and they make big announcements at the United Nations or across stages large and small throughout the city. They say things like, we will cut emissions drastically. We're going to invest in a rapid energy and whole economy transition, and we will do all of this equitably. Now, delivering on these promises, of course, is a monumental task. And we've made so little progress so far that our children actually now suffer from widespread climate anxiety. A survey of 10,000 youths in over 10 countries found that nearly 6 in 10 were very or extremely worried about climate change. And 4 in 10 fear that governments are not doing enough. And that same proportion, and this one really gets me, that 4 in 10 young people between ages 18 and 25 now hesitate to have children of their own in the future due to the climate crisis. So I happen to have some of those anxious children. I have 3 of them, in fact, and I have watched, quite sadly, them go from being really passionate as young children about demanding climate action to now being really just resigned to the fact that they live on a burning planet and the adults that are in charge either don't care or they're simply too incompetent to do anything about it. So if we, the adults in this room, want to prove them wrong, and we actually want to deliver on the promises that we've already made and actually even raise our ambitions, I think we know we have to make huge investments. And those huge investments, of course, do come with colossal opportunity. In fact, the greatest opportunities that we all have seen in many generations to completely transform all aspects of our economy. And that's why many of you here in this room today who steward trillions of dollars are already racing towards the sustainability revolution. We know, though, that meeting the challenges of a global crisis like climate change, as well as parallel crises such as with inequality and with biodiversity collapse, those things demand more than just money chasing after the latest opportunities. It really demands intention. It demands new knowledge to guide capital to do what it can actually do at its very best. At its very best, capital catalyzes innovations that will revolutionize how we actually run our economies and our societies to the greatest benefit for everyone, to create value that is sustainable. And that is where the MSCI Sustainability Institute comes in. We're building this institute because we really believe that capital markets can create more value, and it can create more sustainable value through knowledge and collaboration from leaders across domains. We're really excited to work not just with investors, but academics and policymakers, think tanks, NGOs, and companies in every industry, leveraging MSCI's experience in developing new ways to measure both financial and non-financial value. So we at MSCI believe that to unleash the power of capital to really do its best, we really need research that is underpinned not just by analytical rigor, but by implementable data for practitioners. We really need policy that is not just well-intended, but practicable for the efficient allocation of capital. And we need honest debate about where our current approaches are just not working. And we need to seed experimentation with new approaches. So the MSCI Sustainability Institute will be drawing on decades of experience in making sense of sustainability data. We're going to be drawing on our expertise in developing blueprints for investability to pursue a series of novel collaborations that can drive action by capital markets. That includes, but is not limited to, making data, metrics, and know-how available to sustainability researchers beyond finance, and conversely, to highlight important studies and contribute to important studies that could help capital allocators across finance to really sharpen their decision making. So you're going to be hearing more about the work that we're going to be doing in the coming weeks and months. Many of our most immediate initiatives are aimed at addressing 3 important questions of the day from different angles and with different methods. Is 1.6 the new 1.5 degrees? Can climate resilience be an attractive investment? When does sustainability drive value? So right now, this afternoon, I'm excited to hear from speakers who will offer perspectives that should help all of us have more informed debates on these 3 topics. You're going to find a detailed agenda. I think that there is a QR code somewhere that you're supposed to be able to scan to look at the agenda for the day, as well as the speaker bios. First up, we will consider whether 1.5 degrees is out of reach and how we can collectively still maybe pull a rabbit out of the hat at the 11th hour. So we're really honored today to be able to hear from Simon Steele, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, who I will introduce in a minute. And after Mr. Steele makes some opening remarks, he will be sitting down with speakers who can draw on their experience stewarding 2 of the largest pension and sovereign wealth funds in the world, trying to safeguard the nearly $3 trillion which millions of savers in their countries depend on. And I'm going to introduce them first. I'm going to start with Hiromichi Mizuno, who almost needs no introductions. For an audience of institutional investors, I feel a little bit like I'm trying to introduce Taylor Swift. And maybe I should be charging ticket fees too. So Hiro served as the Chief Investment Officer of Japan's Government Pension Investment Fund. It is the largest pension fund in the world from 2015 to 2020. And there he really demonstrated his conviction that the only way to meet his responsibilities to the fund's beneficiaries was to improve the performance of the entire economy. And that includes tackling climate change globally and by catalyzing companies to enlarge their talent pool by drawing more women into the workforce and into management ranks. If you've ever had the pleasure of speaking with Hiro, which I hope you will be able to this evening, you know that very few financial leaders in the world can articulate the case for creating sustainable value quite as clearly and as compellingly and as charmingly as Hiro can. So since stepping down from GPIF, Hiro has served as a member of the board of directors of Tesla and a special envoy of the UN Secretary General on Innovative Finance and Sustainable Investments. So when you do have that drink with him, you can ask from his vantage point whether Elon Musk or Antonio Guterres actually has a tougher job. Currently, he serves as a director of Livewire Group, among other appointments. And most recently, he joined MSCI as special advisor to MSCI chairman and CEO Henry Fernandez. He will also be advising the MSCI Sustainability Institute and helping the Institute build an advisory group and set its strategic direction. We're thrilled that Hiro will be leading a conversation on the investor response to the messages from the UNFCCC's executive secretary. And joining him will be Karina Smith Iheanacho, whose name I'm sorry that I probably did not pronounce correctly. And she's responsible for the governance and compliance at Norges Bank Investment Management. So Norges Bank Investment Management is part of the Norwegian Central Bank, managing the world's largest sovereign wealth fund with assets of $1.4 trillion. So with 70% of the fund's assets allocated to equities, the fund owns, on average, 1.5% of the world's listed companies. So that is a lot of engagement power, which I'm sure Karina is going to talk about. So prior to joining Norges, Karina was Vice President of Legal and Chief Compliance Officer at Statoil, the Norwegian state-owned multinational energy company. She has extensive board experience in addition to her deep experience in finance and the energy industry. Now I'm honored to welcome our opening speaker. So in November, delegates from nearly 200 countries will gather for the COP28 climate conference in Dubai. Simon Steele will preside over that gathering as Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Mr. Steele, who was appointed to his post by the UN Secretary General in August of 2022, knows firsthand the realities of global warming and the imperative to help developing countries. Before his current job, he served as Minister for Climate Resilience and the Environment in his native Grenada, after serving as a senior government minister and member of Grenada's Upper House of Parliament. 2 weeks ago, the UNFCCC released a report taking stock of the world's collective climate action. Its conclusion: much more action is needed now, on all fronts and by all actors, if we are to avoid the costliest warming. Analysis by MSCI of the world's listed companies has been showing much the same. So we estimate, as the MSCI Net Zero Tracker, which we have published quarterly, that publicly listed companies contribute to about 1/5 of global warming. And despite a tripling of those companies over the past 3 years that have made commitments to achieve net zero by 2050, publicly listed companies are still on track to overshoot their collective budget for staying under 1.5 degrees in just about 3 years from now. So Executive Secretary Steele has been a force in advocating for a just transition and for strengthening collaboration between nations and the financial sector. We're really honored that he has made time in, probably one of the busiest weeks on his calendar to be joining us here today to discuss what more and better the private sector finance can do to speed the transition. Please help me welcome the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Steele.
Thank you very much.
I think you might still need to hold this.
Okay, thank you very much. It was quite a trek across town to get here, so apologies for my late arrival. So, colleagues, friends, it's good to be in your company for the launch of the MSCI Sustainability Institute. I welcome the Institute's planned focus on climate change to further enhance collaboration between finance, government, business, academia, and civil society. There is an urgency to this work. We're in the midst of a climate emergency. Possibly, I think records will show it is the hottest year on record, with extreme weather events wreaking death, devastation, and misery all across the world. And yet, this could just be the sign of worse to come. And what we are seeing today is what the scientists have been telling us for years. Our recently released synthesis report on the global stocktake, the first comprehensive assessment of how far we've progressed in implementing the Paris Agreement, shows we are far off track in limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The science is clear. We need to cut emissions by 43% by 2030. That's less than 7 years from now. And to reach net zero by 2050. However, the current level of climate commitments by governments, the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, will lead to emission cuts of only 0.3% by 2030. So as I said, very, very far off track. So we're short of action and we're short of ambition. COP28 in Dubai is our chance to make a dramatic course correction. Based on the comprehensive assessment of the global stocktake, we can recalibrate our efforts to get back on track, to scale up our efforts across all areas, increase ambition in the next round of nationally determined contributions due in 2025, so we can accelerate action in what's remaining of this critical decade of action. We need to map out key steps and milestones to decarbonize our economies while ensuring sustainable development and just transitions. This will require massive investments and shifts in financial flows. But if done in a way that supports pathways towards low emissions and climate resilient development, we can create opportunities to unlock trillions of dollars and shift investment to climate action at the scale that's needed. Colleagues, friends, finance is foundational within the UN climate talks. As we look ahead to COP28, we must progress on goals such as the delivery of the long-pledged $100 billion, a doubling of adaptation finance, a substantial replenishment of the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund. We need a global financial system, both public and private, that's aligned with climate action and green finance. The role of the financial sector, particularly asset owners like yourselves, is critical in directing financial flows to address climate change. Take the energy sector, for example. At COP28, there are opportunities to agree on the tripling of renewable capacity and doubling energy efficiencies by 2030, an opportunity. Mobilizing finance of trillions of dollars at scale is required to achieve these targets. Phasing down of unabated fossil fuels is also an inevitable step and crucial to meeting our Paris goals as articulated in the Global Stocktake Report. The cost of inaction is higher than cost of just transition, but we face some very, very difficult questions. Will asset owners divest their investments or not? How do we finance a transition away from fossil fuels? How to manage the trade-offs between short-term profits from fossil fuel investment and long-term sustainable growth? And I think within that, the three questions that were posed at the start answers could be found within that. The private sector, particularly financial institutions like yourselves, can move faster than global political processes. Significant public finance packages were announced in North America, Europe, and Asia over the past couple of years. Private sectors are moving fast to expand not only production of solar panels, wind power turbines, electric vehicles and heat pumps, but also invest in new technologies such as hydrogen. The financial sector has a vital role to play in powering this transition. And it will be a collaborative effort by governments, businesses, financial institutions, civil societies, scientists, communities on the front lines, all going at this together. The MSCI Sustainable Institute is right to support this collaboration. Only by working together will we be able to drive the transition to a cleaner, greener, more prosperous and equitable future. I thank you.